Donald Trump, of course, the Celebrity Apprentice had its biggest year ever with my friend John Rich coming out on top. And Donald Trump has decided to take himself out of the presidential running for the time being. And he joins us now. So is Huntsman is he really the elite's favorite now, Donald?
Well, I think part of the problem is he was ambassador to China during a time that nobody ripped us, other than OPEC, of course, which is the all-time champion, but nobody ripped us like China. So you have the ambassador to China, you have China manipulating their currency and ripping us to shreds and taking our jobs and making our products. And I think that's a very hard position for him to be in.
Well, I find it interesting that he has assembled a team of folks behind him pushing him, like John Weaver, who was John McCain's chief campaign strategist, and that campaign was run so well.
Well, I saw the commercial this morning for the first time of Mr. Huntsman riding on a motorbike of some kind, and I don't know if you've seen it, but it's really a weird kind of an ad, I think. I think it's terrible. I don't know who did it, but I would get rid of them immediately. I think the ad is absolutely terrible, although I think everyone's talking about how bad it is, so maybe it was a great ad. Who knows?
Yeah, well, it's so edgy that it lost all of us.
Well, I don't think it got. We're supposed to be intelligent people. I don't get it, and I don't think too many other people get it either. But I would stop that campaign. Boy, what a waste it is. Although, again, we are talking about it.
Yeah, let's go down the list of the sort of top folks running for president on the Republican side, and I'd love to get your one-word assessment of them after this debate, after these polls that have come out putting Romney on top. So Romney, number one, Mitt Romney.
Well, I'd rather do a little more than one word.
One sentence.
How about one sentence? Problem with his Massachusetts tenure. Had a big problem there. I mean, beyond, and when I say a problem, I'm talking about beyond the RomneyCare, as they call it. He had a problem with jobs. Number 3 worst in the country. So that's a big problem for him, I think.
Michelle Bachmann.
Did a great job at the debate. She is somebody that I know and like. I really think she has been underestimated, and she's doing very well. Did very well at the debate.
Tim Pawlenty.
He had a great opportunity to just blow it out of the park. He was handed a softball. They call lobbed it. He was lobbed a beautiful pitch, a beautiful softball, and boy, did he blow it. And I watched the interview with Chris Wallace, and frankly, I thought he was pretty effective. And then he was asked to reiterate. All he had to do was say the same thing. And it almost looked like he was afraid to do it because Romney was standing next to him. Terrible.
Newt Gingrich.
Well, it's very sad what's gone on with Newt, and I think that it's just not going to go anywhere. And I like him, and I feel good about him. He's a member of my club in Washington. I have a great golf club, and he's a member there. And, good guy, but it just doesn't look like it's working. And honestly, whether it was his managers or not, going on a vacation a couple of weeks after you announce you're running just isn't appropriate. You take vacation. You take your vacation before you announce.
I guess he thinks that it works for Obama, who's always kind of on vacation, so why not just go on vacation?
He takes a lot of vacations, you're right. I just think it was probably not good timing to be taking a cruise. Herman
Cain.
Well, I don't know him, but, I don't see it. I mean, I just don't see it. He's catching on in some polls to a modest extent. Let's see what happens. I really don't know enough about him.
Ron Paul.
Well, he's got some great ideas, but he's also got some ideas that are a little bit too much for a lot of people. He's a character. I think he's a very good guy, and he's a very interesting guy. At least he's got some interest. He didn't shine in the debate as much as he normally does. Usually he is more of a shining star in a debate. I think this debate, he didn't really shine in. I don't know that anybody really was fabulous. I think the debate forum was terrible. All these different people asking questions coming from all over the place. I don't know what it was with John King, who's a nice guy, but there was a constant grunting. I don't know if it was him or somebody else, but there was like a constant grunting, and it's hard to answer certain questions in 10 seconds. How is the economy going? What would you do to fix the economy? You have 30 seconds to answer the question. And then as soon as they started, there was like this grunting, like, we're going to cut you off now. So it was a very weird debate.
Nah, no one watched. That's the only good news. Not a single person watched. So you've said, Donald, that if nobody really, wows in this Republican field, and it looks like just a bunch of losers up there, that you might think of running as an independent. Are any of the people that we went through, let's say if Romney gets the nomination, would that mean that you would run as an independent, or Bachmann?
It's a little bit too soon to tell, actually. And as you know, when I left, and there were a number of reasons, and you know the reasons. When I look at what the Republicans are doing to themselves, when I look at what they're doing with respect to the Medicare and other things. The cutting of the budget. $100 billion turns out to be like $300 million. When I look at what they're doing, even recently, the tornado victims, we're spending tens of billions of dollars in Afghanistan and Iraq a month. We're spending so much money. We don't even know how much money we're spending, and yet they don't want to help out and this was, coming from a major Republican person. We won't even mention Mr. Cantor's name, okay? I promise not to mention Mr. Cantor's name. But he didn't want to help the tornado victims. Now, he was willing to help, but he wanted to put that alongside of some other things. In other words, you do this and we'll give them some money. And yet we spend tens of billions of dollars a month in Afghanistan and Iraq, and far more than that overall in other places. So I look at what the Republicans are doing, and I look at the timing of Paul Ryan's plan, which is a disaster because, you say what you want. I live in New York. That was a district that just lost, as you know, better than anybody. You know, you're one of the people that know better than I do. They lost simply because of Paul Ryan's plan.
They also had a fake candidate. They also had a fake Tea Party candidate in the mix.
That candidate was a Democrat the last three elections. All of a sudden, he was a Tea Party person.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
That was a whole thing. So, but if you look at the real numbers, this was a person that was very popular, the Republican candidate. It was a race that could not be lost. She embraced Paul Ryan's plan, and she lost quite easily. So. And I think you're going to see that all around the country. They're going to have to do something about his timing. His time. There was no reason, Laura, for him to come out with this plan. He could have sat back. This was Obama's play. And that's what's happening with the Republicans. If you look at the lame duck session, they brought Obama back into play. They brought him back. He was dead. He was Jimmy Carter. He was gone. And in December, the lame duck session, they made a deal with Obama, and he was the rising phoenix. He was hot as a pistol. And they brought him back. And they constantly do it. And I'll tell you, the Paul Ryan plan, I'm not going to talk about the merits of the plan or not. I happen to not like it, if you want to know the truth. First of all, it doesn't balance the budget.
Well, it's a start, though. Here's, Donald, all I say here is that's a whole conversation. I could spend an hour on it. But I think what Paul Ryan did is bold. Maybe it needs to be tweaked, and I'm sure it does. And I think even he says it's not perfect, it's a starting point, but it's actually taking an adult approach to a problem that is intractable right now, and that'll drive our country into the toilet. And so I understand the timing, the strategy question. That's completely separate.
Well, but that's a big part of it.
It's a huge part of it.
It's still not a dictatorship.
Yeah. But
Donald,
have
to win an election.
Donald, if you run as an independent, if you decide to do that, you really decide to do that. The smart folks who follow this stuff, folks like Michael Barone and others, I'm sure would say you would guarantee a second Obama term. And I think people who really like you now and really respect your point of view on China, on trade, on so many of these issues like bringing our troops home and making sure we protect the border at home, I think they're going to be infuriated with you. That's just my take.
Well, I'll take a look at it at the time. As you know, I saw what the Republicans were doing to themselves. I called it suicidal, and you've seen that. But I've seen and a death wish. But I've seen what the Republicans have been doing. I had NBC come. It's hard to say I don't want to do a hit show. I have a hit show. It's a great show. You said about John Rich, who was fabulous.
What's more important, saving the country or keeping the Celebrity Apprentice on?
That's the most important. But I have the right to do that later on. I looked at what was happening with the Republicans, and I'll be honest with you, I just don't like what they're doing. Now, they can change, and maybe they will change, and I have a contract for in 10 months, I'm free. And we'll see what happens. Now, I don't know that you're right. I think I take a lot of votes away from Obama. I really think I take a lot of votes away from Obama. I do say this. I believe, and I'd have to see two things. If the economy is doing poorly, which I believe it will be because the people in Washington have no idea what they're doing, And if the Republicans put up a candidate that I don't think can win or that's a weak candidate, I would seriously consider doing that, and I think I could win. And I was leading the polls when I left. I was leading in the polls.
Well, you and I talked about it, and I think you said things and say things that for some reason pretty much none of these Republican candidates, maybe with the exception of Bachmann on some of these issues, will say, whether it's on Afghanistan or whether it's on trade or China. And guess what? When you said these things, forget the birth certificate. When you said the other stuff, and you were focusing on the American economy, rebuilding American business, guess what? People are like, wait, finally someone's speaking to us and making sense on these issues. And people call it economic populism. You know what I call it? I call it saving the country.
And you also call it common sense. I mean, I want to rebuild the country. I want to see this country rebuilt. We build schools in Afghanistan. They get blown up 2 days after they open, and then we rebuild them again. But if we have a school in Brooklyn or in Kentucky or in California, we have no money for them. The whole thing is ridiculous. I mean, what's going on is absolutely insane. And you look at how other countries are taking advantage of this country. How
of course.
Look at Pakistan as an example. I mean, you take a look at Pakistan, where we give them billions and billions of dollars. And now, they knew Osama bin Laden was there. Everybody knew. Everybody. The president, everybody knew he was there. For them to say we didn't know he was living. He lived in the biggest house in a fairly major city right next to the military base. They didn't know he was there.
No, it's ridiculous.
I mean, the whole thing is incredible, and yet we give them millions of dollars. It's crazy.
Breaking news, Donald. Anthony Weiner is telling friends he's stepping down.
Good. Well, he has no choice. I mean, he is a disaster. But I've known him a long time. I did Piers Morgan's show, who I'm also very proud of. He was another winner like John Rich. I mean, these guys that do Celebrity Apprentice,
at least he won
do very well for themselves, don't they?
Yeah.
So he took Larry King's place. So I'm doing a show, and Anthony Weiner's on the show. And I told Anthony, you will never be the mayor of New York. I'm not a fan of Anthony before the fact. I said, Anthony, you'll never be the mayor of New York. You're a loser. You're never going to be the mayor of New York. Now, little did I realize that for unknown reasons, he won't be the mayor of New York, and that's a good thing for New York. Well, I assume he's going to step down. I think he's an embarrassment to the country.
Yeah. Well, you know what I said, Donald, and look, there's one career path for disgraced Democratic politicians, and that's to take the 8 o'clock hour on CNN. So, Elliot Spitzer, all I can say is look out. Your job...
Well, that's
your
very
job,
interesting.
Yeah, your job may be in trouble.
It is amazing with Anthony. He's a congressman and fairly well-known and certainly out there, as you know. How do you send to people, to women, that you don't know, or maybe he doesn't know, who knows, maybe he knows them, but whether you know him or not, how do you send photos, full photos of yourself nude? I mean, how do you do this? And you're a congressman and you're well-known. It's hard to believe. So that was... Also, I mean, I hate to equate it with the same, but that was truly a death wish. That was like there was something wrong upstairs. I mean, the one I feel sorry for is his wife, who's really respected, and she's probably saying, what kind of a whack job did I marry here?